She was already seated when Anne walked in. And in that 1 second, just one, Camilla's face cracked. Her eyes went tight and sharp, the way someone looks when they hear a sound they were absolutely not supposed to hear. Then, just as fast, her face went smooth again. Composed, controlled, like a mask clicking back into place. But everyone near her had already seen it. She had been told Anne wasn't coming. That dinner at Windsor, mid-March 2026, Charles was hosting. The conversation was the usual kind, careful words about gardens, weather, the sort of talk that exists only to fill silence so nobody has to look at what's sitting dead in the middle of the table. Then came a natural pause. Glasses reached for, forks set down. Anne looked directly across the table at Camilla. Not a glance, a full, decided look. The kind where everything has already been settled before the words even come out. She said, "I have been aware of what you tried to do at Sandringham. Those records, the ones you wanted changed. I've handed everything to my lawyers. It's done. There is nothing you can do about it now." Then, she picked her fork back up. The silence that dropped over that room felt like something physical. Charles stared at his plate like a man praying for the floor to open beneath him. Staff near the doorway froze. Every person at that table suddenly found their food absolutely fascinating. Camilla let it sit. 1 beat. 2 beats. Then she smiled. Not a startled smile. A slow, warm, completely prepared smile, one that had been sitting ready and waiting for exactly this moment. She looked at Anne almost gently and said, "I'm not sure what you mean." That sounds very much like estate management gossip. Anne, warm, light, almost sympathetic. Like Anne was a slightly confused woman who had been handed some bad information, and Camilla genuinely felt sorry about the mix-up. Everyone at that table understood instantly what had just happened. That response had been rehearsed. It had been ready before Camilla even walked through the door. Anne nodded once, did not smile, did not respond. She returned to her plate and did not look at or speak directly to Camilla again for the rest of that meal. Charles sat between these two women and said absolutely nothing. People who were there say the silence for the rest of that lunch felt like sitting inside a room where something had been completely destroyed and everyone had silently agreed not to mention it. What started this? What was so valuable about a wing of a country estate that it ended with lawyers, legal filings, and a confrontation that people in that room are still talking about? Let's talk about what really happened. The northeast private wing of Sandringham House is not a glamorous place. It sits away from every public part of the estate. No tourists, no cameras, no official anything. It has its own garden entrance on the quiet side of the grounds, its own kitchen, its own staff access, completely separate from the main house. And running alongside it is a network of secondary roads through the estate grounds. Vehicles can arrive and leave through those roads without passing a single staff checkpoint, without appearing in any official log, without leaving any record that they were ever there. In a world where every royal movement is tracked, photographed, and cataloged, that wing was a blind spot. And a blind spot inside a royal estate is worth more than almost anything else you could name. The official story, when word started spreading, was simple enough. Sandringham closes to the public every July through August. Charles heads to Balmoral in Scotland every summer without exception. So the estate sits essentially empty, no king, no official schedule, no palace staff monitoring every door. Camilla, the story went, simply wanted a quiet summer stay, a peaceful retreat. That was the story. It was nowhere close to the truth. What many people don't know is that Anne had been watching Camilla's network for years. Not just watching her, people had been quietly and carefully documenting it. a group Camilla had been building for decades, long before she ever became queen. Aristocratic friends whose names never appear on official royal schedules. Former press contacts who had been shaping how the public sees this family for a very long time. Political allies sitting in powerful rooms, holding favors they had never been asked to repay. Accounts from people close to Anne's household describe years of watching stories appear in the British press that somehow always made Camilla look good, and somehow always made the people she wanted gone look terrible. Decisions made inside the palace about senior staff, about household arrangements, about access. Decisions nobody could fully explain, but that always, without exception, moved power in one direction, toward Camilla. But it was what came after the press patterns that truly alarmed Anne's people. There were conversations happening, private conversations, in private spaces about a very specific question. What happens to power inside the royal household when Charles can no longer hold it? Not if. When? Who controls household decisions? Which senior staff stays and which gets removed? Who sits in the rooms where the real choices get made? These were not casual conversations, they were planning conversations, and Camilla needed somewhere to have them that left no trace. The plan Camilla set in motion was precise, cold, and very nearly worked. She sent a representative to the administrative office at Sandringham with a specific instruction. They were to pull every internal usage record for the northeast private wing of the house, every documented stay Anne's household had made in that wing over several decades, every single entry, and then change them, not delete them. That would be too easy to catch. Instead, every entry that read Princess Royal Household Usage was to be quietly rewritten to read General Royal Household Usage. Anne's name would simply disappear from the paper history of that wing. Her family would not exist in those records at all, their decades of use erased. So when the time came for Camilla to take that wing, there would be no documented basis for Anne to object. No record that Anne had ever had any specific claim there at all. She would be standing at a door that the paperwork said had never been hers. There is something important to understand about British estate law here. When a family member uses a specific space consistently over a long period of time, and there are records proving it, that creates a legal right. Not ownership, but a recognized legal claim that cannot simply be brushed aside. The only way to kill it is to kill the paper trail behind it. That is exactly what Camilla was doing. And then, before the representative left, Camilla made absolutely sure the staff understood what failure meant. She stood over them and told them that if they made a single mistake, they would be fired. Immediately, the fear of getting it wrong was the last thing they felt before they walked out that door. She came dangerously close to getting away with it. What she did not account for was one particular staff member, someone who had worked at Sandringham for over 20 years, someone Camilla had spoken down to one too many times, treated like furniture one too many times. When the reclassification paperwork landed on that person's desk, something snapped. They pushed the papers aside. Then they picked up the phone and made a personal call directly to Anne's private secretary, not through any official channel that could be traced or intercepted. Before making that call, this person had reportedly told the people closest to them exactly what they were about to do. What they said was this: Camilla had gone too far. Somebody needed to deal with it, and it was going to be them. They picked up that phone and burned Camilla's entire plan to the ground. Anne received the information on a Tuesday morning. By Thursday, her lawyers were fully briefed. By Monday, they had submitted a formal legal filing directly to the estate's administrative office in Norfolk, not through Buckingham Palace. That detail matters. Buckingham Palace is where Camilla's people sit. That is where information gets filtered and quietly redirected. By going directly to the estate office, Anne bypassed every layer of that machinery completely. The filing was simple and devastating. It stated that Anne's household had used this specific wing consistently for decades and presented every single piece of evidence proving it. Once that document exists, nobody can simply make it disappear. Removing it requires a formal legal process that would force Charles to take his own sister to court over his private estate, a catastrophic public nightmare that nobody in that family wants. By the time Camilla's representative called the estate office asking for a progress update on the reclassification, it was already completely over. The filing was done. The window was sealed. Anne had moved so fast and so quietly that everything was finished before Camilla even realized the counterattack had begun. There is a kind of fury that does not scream. It does not break things. It pulls completely inward, goes absolutely still, and starts calculating how much damage it is willing to cause. That is what settled over Camilla when she understood what had happened. And before you can fully understand what she did next, you need to understand exactly what she had just lost. Because it was not one thing. It was two. The private operations room was gone. But the second loss was more personal. According to sources close to the situation, Camilla and Charles had been locked in a sustained private battle over how to handle the monarchy's public connection to Andrew. She wanted it total and permanent. He kept pulling back from the edge of it. The tension had been building for weeks with no resolution, and Camilla had reached the end of her patience. The Sandringham retreat was going to be her answer. She was going to physically remove herself from Charles, go cold, go completely silent, let him feel the full suffocating weight of her absence until he came back to her on her terms. Both plans were now dead, killed by a legal filing completed before she even knew it had started. Camilla went to Charles. She walked into that room and stood over him like she was the one wearing the crown. She told him Anne had taken legal action on property that belonged to him personally, his estate, in case he had forgotten. That his sister had sent lawyers onto his land and carved out a legal claim without asking him a single question, without calling him, without showing him the most basic respect of a conversation. She stopped moving and looked directly at him. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like she thinks you have no authority left at all. Charles told her he needed time to think. He never came back with an answer. Camilla waited 4 days. She sent a message through an intermediary asking for his position. The intermediary returned with nothing. His silence was a verdict. Within 48 hours of receiving nothing from Charles, two things happened simultaneously. The first was invisible. Camilla picked up the phone and started making calls. One by one, she reached her network, the people who attend the most exclusive private dinners in Britain, who sit in the most powerful drawing rooms, who can destroy how someone is perceived without ever making a single public statement. She gave them one message to carry. Anne had not made a legitimate legal move. She was a bitter, desperate woman who knew her time at the center of this family was over. Her judgment was gone. Her actions were an embarrassment, and the people closest to the family were genuinely starting to worry about her state of mind. Carry it everywhere. Say it to everyone that mattered. None of it could be traced back to Camilla. Not one word. Anne could not respond to it because it was never said publicly. She could not deny it because it had no source anyone could point to. It simply existed everywhere, doing its damage silently, and there was absolutely nothing Anne could do to stop it. The second move was visible. Camilla canceled 2 joint public engagements with Charles that had been confirmed on the schedule for the following week. She was showing him 2 things at once. Through the Whisper network, she was showing him what she was capable of doing to Anne. Through the canceled engagements, she was showing him what she was capable of withdrawing from him, their visible unity, their public partnership, the image of a functioning king and queen that the monarchy depends on. She was holding it up so he could see it clearly, then showing him what it looked like when she chose to pull it away. And then she went further than anyone expected. She instructed her private secretary to formally raise a request with the king's private secretary, a full institutional review of all private usage arrangements across every royal estate property, every informal agreement, every unwritten understanding, every gentleman's arrangement that any member of the royal family held over any space on any royal estate anywhere in Britain. Every arrangement, every family member, every space. Andrew's arrangement at Wood Farm on the Sandringham grounds. William and Kate's long-standing connection to Anmer Hall on the same estate. Every quiet, historically understood agreement that kept this family's private life functioning. She would rather detonate the entire foundation than accept that Anne had beaten her inside it. When word of that request reached Anne, she sat quietly with it for a moment. Then she said something the people around her have not forgotten. She said she had expected it, because Anne had not filed a legal document and simply hoped for the best. She had built something that could withstand exactly this. The paper trail her lawyers had constructed was not just thorough enough to survive a family dispute. It had been built to survive a full institutional review. Camilla had tried to erase her from the history of that wing. She had failed. She had tried to use Charles to override the filing. He had stayed silent. She had tried to use her network to make Anne look bitter and broken and finished. Anne had said nothing and let her do it. And now Camilla was threatening to burn down the entire system of royal estate arrangements rather than accept a single loss. Anne was still standing there, completely still, jaw set. Whatever Camilla was willing to destroy, whatever she was prepared to threaten or set on fire, Anne had already changed the rules of this war permanently. She had moved first. She had moved smart, and she had made absolutely certain that when the real assault came, everything she needed was already in place and already beyond Camilla's reach. Camilla could burn whatever she wanted. These stories provide insight into something that rarely gets said out loud about the British monarchy, that the real battles are never the ones anyone sees. They happen in estate offices in Norfolk, in private calls made on personal phones, in whispers carried through drawing rooms where no recording device ever goes. The public sees the family on balconies and at state dinners. What they do not see is this. And this is what it actually looks like.